Our next program point is really exciting. This is going to be a conversation, a so-called fireside chat. No fire in sight, though, good thing, between two incredible minds that take us into one of the most exciting initiatives shaping the future of music and technology. We've already heard from Dr. Martin Clancy earlier this morning in the opening conversation, and I'm really thrilled to learn more about the AI OK literacy module. And this is a project designed to demystify AI, encourage artists and creators to experiment with new tools, and crucially, to open up new pathways to fair remuneration. And to unpack everything that is the vision and goals behind AI OK, we're going to be joined by the brilliant Hanna Kahlert, who's a senior social analyst at Medea Research, in conversation with Dr. Martin Clancy. So please, everyone, help me in giving a really warm applause to these two individuals. Thank you so much.
Is it working? Yep. Yeah, hello. I'd like to just change this a little bit from the description and just say that I'd like to talk and share with you some of the accidental conversations we've had over the last probably 2 years. I met Hanna by accident the first time that I started working on this thing called AI OK. And since then, we just speak about, and I learned so much from the conversations that I have with Hanna and your perspective. And they're often quite dark and dystopian. And so this is just an opportunity really to kind of, for me to do, I'll get the plug out of the way first of all. So AI OK is funded by the Irish government. It comes out of my research that was a result of basically reading books like Attali's Noise, and then figuring that when you get to a certain age, that there's a social responsibility that you need to do something if you think the future looks bleak. And my simple idea was that if you get people together in a room like this and you figured out the best that you could do and you stuck a label on it that you could change, that you could go, we got that wrong, that might be a way of moving into the future. And to that end, there are different commercial things that I'm involved in on that level. But I'm currently putting together an AI literacy module. And AI literacy is, just to give you a bit of background where that is that it's a fundamental requirement of the EU AI Act that anybody who uses AI tools should be literate in AI. And it's very vague. So I took the opportunity to figure that this might be a way of taking all the kind of stuff that we've had in conversations or on my research and then making that available. So that's what I'm currently working on. It's I'm doing it in partnership with AIM, the Association of Independent Music Makers in Ireland, and the National Concert Hall, which is our kind of conservatory, to see how we can make that work. And we probably will get it wrong, but that's part of the nature of our conversations. So that's all that bit.
So I'm not just a person that Martin ran into. I work for a market research company in music and digital entertainment. So part of what I do is look at disruptions, how that affects everyone across the value chain, from creators up to companies and business models. And yeah, we often run into each other and end up having like dark dystopian conversations about, oh my God, what's AI going to do? Everything's terrible. But one of the best parts about it is we kind of follow that up with, so what then? I feel like a lot of conversations when it comes to AI fall into two camps. You have the ones where it's like, AI is going to fix the world and it's amazing. Also, I have an AI startup and you should invest. Or someone panicking and going, oh my God, AI is going to ruin everything. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, everything's fucked. Someone should fix it. But there's often not a follow-up. I mean, sometimes you have really good conversations like the one before this, but I thought it was a really good opportunity when you brought it up. Like, let's have that conversation of it is nuanced. There are challenges, there are opportunities, to use the buzzwords. Right. And it is threatening, but there is also a what comes next. So, yeah.
Yeah. And to that, media research, if you're not familiar with it, like, they are really, really smart. And one of the reasons why I use that particular word is that they ask questions and look at things in different ways than is the general kind of approach. I don't know whether that's the makeup or it's policy that's there, but I find it a great resource.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has so much data, they don't even know what to do with it. And what we kind of do is go in and ask the why question, sort of get to the bottom of, oh, okay, well, we see that, for example, ChatGPT use is super high. Okay, let's dig into why that is. How are people using it? What are they using it for? What value does it have? And then if they come out with a new feature, we can say, oh, well, that's going to pair really well with that, or, oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So that is what we try to do, and I'm glad that that's how it comes across.
Yeah. So, and then the other part of this is that it's a conversation. I don't know if there's a roving microphone, but if it's not, to shout up, because it really is to try and figure out how do we, like, the kind of frame of this is how to build an AI literacy module that isn't just simply copyright-based or music industry-based. I kind of skipped around that bit, by the way, because the PRS had done a fantastic guide called Get Paid, and WIPO did a series called The Clip modules, which are all about how to, an A to Z of the music industry. So I'm using their information and they're giving me their content. So I'm more curious about what else do we think that we need to, what questions should we be asking? Like, what for you right now is the most interesting thing that's going on in AI? It's a nice and easy question.
Very easy. I think probably one of the most interesting dynamics is that AI it's just a tool. It's just something that you can use. And the question is how we use it, how we apply it. A lot of the challenges that come up are, oh, people aren't using it correctly, they don't understand what it does. And it's also about how, as a society, we adopt it and what we use it to replace or, take the place of. And I think that's where a lot of the sense of threat comes into play, especially in the creative industries, is, oh, maybe I won't get paid anymore because the advertising company can just spit something out with Suno. Or maybe remuneration will be harder because the copyright's really hard to track, or all of these things. But it's very important to take a step back and realize AI isn't causing any problems that didn't already exist. It's just exacerbating them. So the issue of it being very hard to make money as a music artist, streaming fragmentation has already done that. The question about copyrights, I mean, we can solve the copyright issue potentially, but then you end up in a world where already you get 0.0002 cents per stream of your song. Okay, now let's expand that. So now we can track that someone's generated a song that used, 2 lines of music from that song you made, and has 5 others. So already you're splitting credits with like 5 songwriters, 3 producers, and your fellow artist. Now you're splitting across 5 other tracks that all went into the song the AI created. So you just have a further fragmentation of rights, which is itself a broader issue that, again, AI did not cause, but it's exacerbating. So when we look for solutions to the challenges and we look how to use AI, it's also about talking about the bigger issues in the industry and how else we can solve those. Yeah.
And if you were here on the earlier chat where Jacques Attali was chatting, we did speak about a little bit about that point that Hanna made there, which is really important, which is that things were pretty bad before AI came in for the majority of people who were working in music, and maybe that the question that could be asked is how can these tools be used to improve the lot of the 98% or 97% of people who usually have 2 or 3 jobs in order just to survive. So there's definitely that question needs to be asked. But I want to get back to this a bit about creativity, and if you're comfortable enough with this, like we're here talking, we speak about creators. You've worked as a writer, so all of the large language models for quite a while have been able to knock out things in any style. Can you speak a little bit how do you contend with that? How does that work? Because to me that speaks to the future of music making.
Yes, it's a bit of a bleak one, but there's a little bit of hope on the other side of that. So
stay with the bleak stuff.
Stay with the bleak stuff. Basically, I was a copywriter before I went into research, and that job has all but disappeared. So what used to be teams of 20 copywriters turned into teams of 10 editors of what AI put out, turned into one guy basically managing all of those responsibilities. By the way, editing what ChatGPT puts out often takes more work than writing it from scratch, but you get paid less per word. So that was like an interesting thing to watch. The work basically gets devalued.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
So the work is technically less valued by the marketplace because you're not creating it, you're just modifying. So copywriting, you get paid either per word, and then editing, it's usually just a bit less. So the teams went from team of 20 creating all the content for a page, team of 10 copy editing the page, all getting paid less, to a team of 2 or 1 or whatever. There was an article about a guy who basically was the head of one of these teams, and he went through this whole process and eventually was made redundant because by the end of it, no one was actually reading any of the articles because they weren't very interesting, because they all sounded like AI, which kind of takes us into dead internet theory, which I know you love to discuss, so we can get into that in a second. The irony was that this guy then ended up working for an AI company, helping make the AI sound better, so working for the thing that made him redundant in the first place. And today, I'm very glad that I did not become a full-time copywriter, because I would have probably issues with being employed right now. So there's 2 sides of that, right? One is that a job that used to be considered a skill becomes de-skilled, less valued, and eventually there are fewer positions because you only need 1 person to do the work of 5. But on the other hand, the output also becomes devalued. So you then end up in sort of like this race to the bottom, where actually the high quality stuff that's still worth something is still made by people. So you basically stand out if you aren't doing AI, because there's so much AI stuff, if you talk about it in a creative sense.
So you stand out because and this goes to the M dash, if you don't mind me getting into the detail of this. This is a little bit of technical part here. I'm sure everybody can apply this to music, but we were just chatting about this earlier because there was I think I mentioned there was a study I saw about, what was the term? There was a technical term.
Is it delve?
The devil, hang on. What was it called? Oh yeah, seep in. So much of a technical term. About the way that language in our spoken and written words and in our conversation, we are now learning from computers and aping that consciously, unconsciously. And you mentioned about something about the M dash and that you love using it, but now that's an identifier, so you deliberately don't use that. That struck me as just like a very nice kind of case study of all of this. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, I mean, so probably most people are aware of this, but AI usually, it tends to use a couple of specific like linguistic things. So it overuses em dashes. I forget what it's called, but basically like there's a certain type of illustrative language it'll use. It uses words like delve. And so now those words become like, those things become flags in writing. If you're writing content for a website, probably less of a concern, although you do see a lot of people on LinkedIn going, yeah, and I go and I edit out all the em dashes, so it sounds less like AI. You're like, okay, great. But if you're writing from scratch, you actually tend to start avoiding those words. Now, I think this is kind of interesting because you see it also just with like social media language, like TikTok speak. Gen Z will use, like, there's language that changes based on what the algorithms will promote versus not promote. I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm totally blanking. I think unalive is the big TikTok phrase, obviously kind of a dark term, but stuff like that. So yeah, language is reflected by technology, but it is also interesting that especially with AI, you now see people avoiding things that AI stands out for.
Okay. I'm interested in this because there's loads of things that you've spoken to me about that I think don't get covered enough. Can you talk a little bit about not only dead internet theory, but also the movement away from the digital?
Sure. So this is one of my favorite topics. So I guess let's take it back to the example of the copywriter who ends up, the entire team gets made redundant because no one's reading the blog. The dead internet theory predates AI. It's essentially that you can think of it as hyperbole or conspiracy theory or future prediction or whatever. But basically, it's the concept of there aren't any people on the internet anymore. It's just bots generating content that other bots then click on and comment on. You see this on Facebook a lot. They're like bot farm posts. This was like Elon Musk's whole thing is, I'm going to get rid of bots. And ironically, Twitter X is now, Grok and a load of like bot accounts commenting on it. Make of that what you will. I do think it is obviously an over-exaggeration, but there was an estimate about 2 years ago, I think, by the European Commission that 90% of content online would be AI generated by 2026. And I almost think that's underestimating it. There's just so much content and so much stuff. And it's very hard to judge by metrics anymore how something's performing because you'll get a lot of automated engagement. This is where streaming fraud comes in. We see this like all across the digital marketplace. Now, the flip side of this is that as digital content becomes less and less valuable because it's so easy to produce and reproduce and fake and just, create great swaths of it. We're also simultaneously seeing a swing of people away from digital. So
any kind of percentages or senses of that? How small is this?
So I think about 2 years ago, came back from New Year's, and I realized all of my friends had given up on dry January. No one was bothering. We're all drinking. But they were all doing a digital detox. And I was like, that's interesting. I wonder if that's just my group of people or if that's a broader trend. So we asked about it in our survey. And 80% of under 25s had tried to cut down their screen time. And that's through stuff like deleting apps, leaving their phone at home. Deleting apps was the big one. So not deleting the account, just deleting the app from your phone. Now, does this actually translate into reduced engagement? Not necessarily. So around the same time, again, to reference Elon Musk, hate doing that, but we'll do it anyway. He posted, Instagram is the most deleted app on the App Store. It's like, well, that's interesting, because our data shows that weekly active use of Instagram has remained totally consistent. I bet it's also the most downloaded app on the App Store, and it was. So basically, people, especially young people, want to reduce their screen time, want to reduce the amount of time they spend on their phones. An app like Instagram is very addictive, takes a lot of time, so that's the first one they'll go to try and reduce, so they'll delete it. And then they'll spend 2 days and they'll go, oh my God, I'm missing out. I need to re-download it again. So they're in this download, delete cycle, and the actual use stays consistent. Simultaneously, we see a slight rise in analog. So CDs went into growth territory for the first time in like 15 years around the same time. Obviously, analog is not making a full-on comeback as the default mode of consumption, but it's taking on a new role of quality rather than quantity. It's the thing you will spend your 25, 30 euros on. It's the thing that you pick out of a lineup versus the digital stuff. It's just like on in the background. So it has more value to it, intrinsic value to it, than the digital stuff, even if it's happening on a smaller scale. And frankly, just the finding that people are trying to reduce their screen time is very interesting because, you know, if you're a platform, you want people to be excited to use your platform. And instead you have 80% of people going, I desperately want to spend less time on this. That may not have an impact now, but moving forward, you know, it opens up room for competitors, be they offline or online. And it's ripe for disruption, basically, because there's this consumer need for it.
Out of curiosity, how many people in the room, I can't see you, but I'm imagining that you're younger than me, right? How many people in the last 12 months have done some form of this digital detox? Just like a show of hands, hang on. Right. Well, that kind of stands up to what you say. Hanna, how did it go? Huh? yeah, I've seen that. I mean, I'm a great enthusiast for AI, personally, but I don't think that, like, I also drink too much and recently quit smoking, so I can't advocate most of the things that I'm drawn towards. But can we I'd like to get into this area of trust. Because a lot of the conversation that, and so just to kind of something that has been followed me around when I've been speaking about the idea of ethics. And ethics basically, for a very simple explanation of what ethics is, at least to me, is just because something's legal doesn't mean you should do it. It's what you care about. And if you want it on a higher level, you just go and look at the UN SDGs, and there's 17 of them, and those goals give you a fairly good idea of what ethics can look like on a global level. But practically speaking, trust is at the basis of this idea of ethics. And as we saw earlier, if ever there was an oxymoron, the idea is the music industry is not founded on trust and good practice. So how do you have trust among pirates, effectively? This contradiction is at the heart of how we engage with AI. But of late, I've started standing up for the word trust because I don't think it's a dirty word, and I think it's something that we can actually go, I think we do it, and we can be, not everything has to have a technological solution. At some point, there has to be a societal goal that we are aiming for that's somewhere above getting caught. So can you talk, what does trust mean, like when we speak about trust and AI, outside of attribution, or is it feasible, or is it just...
Another easy question.
Yeah.
It depends I guess it depends on the context. If you're talking about trust in AI companies to develop their tools in an ethical way, it's a very difficult question because tech culture is build fast, break things. We're either going to sell or leave the company in 3 years, so the consequences are not my problem personally. Explains a lot, right? And regulation is too slow. It's just regulation takes time, and tech innovation is like boom, boom, boom. Oh, you don't even know what Wi-Fi is, and now you're trying to like figure out what we're doing all the way in the field of AI. So there is, I think, difficulty in that because it's not trust in the tools themselves, right? Like AI, most generative AIs, they're just language learning models. They're just, you plug stuff in and it spits stuff back out, and you can use that in whatever way you want. But when you have a company whose entire business model is just get it out there and then we'll worry about the rest later, there's not an awful lot to put your trust in there because there's not a set goal or like a stability underneath the mission. if we talk about like copyright, using AI ethically outside of those who are developing it, then it's just a question of like agreements, building transparency.
Yeah, let's dial the temperature up a bit on this one. Right? That's too easy. We were chatting last week about this, and I mentioned to you about that Harvard study thing, the top 10 list. And you kind of said, I'm a bit suspicious of that, but I want to share this with you because I find this very curious, and I think that there's something in this. I don't know what it is, so maybe you can tell me. But I have a good instinct about where things get kind of what I get curious about usually leads somewhere interesting. So the top 10 list of the uses of generative AI in 2025 were the following, the top 3 that I remember. The first one was for companionship, the second one was for therapy, and the third one was for meaning. And that kind of scared me, even though it's my surprise, I've been in therapy for years, but using those, I'm just trying to make a joke. You probably got the humor of that, despite that it's true. But actually speaking to an AI, I find as a man who's 60 is one thing, because I'm kind of going, yeah, it's cool, and I like how it can help, but I do worry about what that would have been like for me at a younger age. And this blurring of anthropomorphization, and not necessarily that the technology is so brilliant that we can't see the difference, but the opposite, because that's what got me into this, how easy we want to transfer agency, how much we want to, and how quickly we do that. And that's the bit where trust comes in for me, about how we see that, and it comes into music and all the ways that we design tools, and this is to accelerate you to do this or to be able to do that better. But when you're whether you're in a startup or you're in a band, the experiences are pretty much the same. It's trust. It's like 2 or 3 people, 4 people against the world, that kind of romantic myth, and it's based on trust. Does any of this, where are we heading with this, do you think? Another easy question.
Terrifying places. Yeah, so I find this that the top of the list is like companionship, therapy, meaning. I find it a little sus. There was... basically, around when school term ended, ChatGPT use kind of fell off a cliff because at the end of the day, it's a great tool if you don't want to do your homework, or if you don't want to write that email, or if you don't want to, write that progress report. And that's what people use it for, because you don't really care. Pragmatism is usually what makes up the majority of a use case, right? Like it's something that fits into a need that you have that you don't want to do. When we talk about AI being used as like therapy or use it for emotional discussions, it plays to like a broader issue of lack of connection, especially in the US. People don't live near each other. They have no third spaces. They don't see each other very often. There's a loneliness epidemic. There's a mental health epidemic. And so these are existing problems caused arguably by technology, e.g. social platforms. And now those same companies are saying, here's your solution. Talk to my AI chatbot that now looks like an anime girl. Okay, great. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen the Reddit subreddit of people with AI boyfriends. It's insane. It's a little scary. Basically, ChatGPT, there's been quite a few cases of ChatGPT-induced psychosis, because when when you talk to another person, that other person is rooted in their own perspective that they can come back to you with, and you both have your perspective and you can grow to a new understanding. A generative language learning model does not have that grounded perspective, right? It's a mirror. It just feeds, like whatever you feed it, it gives you back in a very like sycophantic way. South Park did a great episode on this the other week. Highly recommend you watch it. They're really, really nailing it this year. But yeah, so that is an issue, right? Because we have a problem that has been an artificial problem that's being given a solution in the form of AI, in a way it's not really prepared to solve, in a way that is causing problems. And I think the irony there is that the personality of the AI is not actually its practical application. AI is very useful in that it can do things like smart search. I don't need to use keywords. It can figure those out for me. It's very useful in terms of summarizing, lengthening, shortening sentences. In the same way algorithms are useful, it's just a more like natural language way of communicating what you need into what it does. That's its real use case. It's a bit more boring, which is why it's not usually like flashy in the headlines, but that's actually what it's really good at and what it can be really useful for. And when people use it creatively, it can really up their output and like make their music better or make their, save time. So the weird bit is when they go into like this territory of like, oh, but it'll talk to you and it'll be your best friend and it'll like, now we're gonna develop AGI. And I'm like, did you not see iRobot? Like, did you see it and thought that was a great product idea? Okay. That's the weird bit, because it's not actually like, it seems to be having a serious negative impact on people's mental health. But we're just gonna roll with that anyway. And you could take that out and the tool would still be useful and still have all of the pickup that it does, because ultimately it's the practical bits. That's what it gets used for, to come full circle.
So, quick bit of research from me here, right? How many of you have experienced this kind of chatbot as your buddy, if not your partner? How many of you, like, you probably don't want, you can signal indiscreetly by scratching or doing some, I can see, okay, so a number of people are shuffling uncomfortably in their seats. We'll take that as that. Okay, so where this leads me to is, and I have no idea what time we're supposed to be finished at, but they'll turn the lights on or people will leave. But I'm curious about this because when you mentioned AGI there, and part of what I'm trying to do with this AI literacy module is to figure out where you draw the line. It's very easy to deal with the functional parts about, and you're quite right, this is what prompts do, and you've got to check your references and be careful of bias, and the thing will hallucinate, and these are all the kind of checklists. But then where you start moving into this more peculiar area, and so, for instance, certainly for me, the question of AGI as a conversation piece, because literally the companies that are leading these technologies, it's written on the tin. It's what they are in the business of doing. Whether that's true or possible doesn't matter. It's what they're being invested to try to work towards. So you can't say, well, that'll never happen, because just like OpenAI did 18 months ago, they just changed the definition of what AGI is to something that they can achieve. But maybe a good place for us to explore this in a musical kind of environment is maybe, we were chatting earlier about Hatsune Miku. I'm taking it you're all familiar with Hatsune Miku, yeah?
There's some mixed responses. Japanese virtual artist. She has concerts.
She's been 16 for the last, since 2009.
Yep, and a lot of her songs are actually made up of fan-made lyrics. So she's very like, the fans basically help create her. They're like co-creators, basically.
Yeah. So prior to AI, I used to show Hatsune Miku as being a kind of vision of what was a frightening future, because she was a hologram that was touring. And where she came from was a piece of software called Vocaloid. So it was one of the first text-to-speech singing that you could use. And that she just really took off. and it was seen as this humanless future. But as Hanna just pointed out, there's also another kind of peculiarity to this, and maybe we can ask some questions from the audience then, which is the fact that 100,000 of her songs are actually written by her audience. So she's a perfect mirror of the experience of what a 14 or a 16-year-old would be, as opposed to the teams of songwriters that are currently mirroring that by humans. At the same time, and the bit that's kind of a slightly darker, because I have to make that contribution to our conversation, is that there was, you could marry Hatsune Miku. I think it was something like 340 people married her, and they would get a certificate from the company, and this little hologram that was they could put beside their bed, or wherever it was. And I just found that deeply weird, and that was a long time ago. And it seems that for me, this whole movement is towards that, and this anthropomorphization, and how do we distinguish that, and that's where this issue of trust is. And so in many ways, Hatsune Miku could be seen as the most authentic folk artist of the 21st century, but probably also the most married hologram in history. Can we ask them, is any of this making any sense? Does any of it resonate? Is there anything you'd like to ask or contribute? Or on a very practical level, I'm going to do my best with this literacy model, so do you have any suggestions of what you think should be in this message in a bottle, content-wise?
I see 1, 2 hands going up, so we're going to start with you.
I find it really interesting about AI being, let's say, ChatGPT, for example, a mirror and quite stiff being in front of you. I think what I did recently is I asked ChatGPT if it could create a fireside chat function, so you could actually interactively talk. And I think I believe we are on the cusp of AI being able to contribute once it learns interaction, and that's what I find really interesting. So if we would have had more deeper talks like it's happening now here, and this would have been recorded directly into a artificial intelligent model, then I think this is happening already. Deep talk from all angles, and that will change the way AI will actually respond in the future.
Let's take all the three, because there's a clock here. So do you want us to give us the other two? The other two, we'll conflate them.
We can try.
Oh gosh. Check. Yeah, it's going to be tricky to conflate this question with that question, but I'll still give it a rock. I'm curious to return to something that you, Hanna, said at the beginning of the talk. You mentioned that AI is not kind of creating new problems in the industry, but it is certainly accelerating the ones that already exist. And in specific, you mentioned kind of the streaming fragmentation and this issue of, technology. What it does is it democratizes the creation process, and as more people can create, you just have to split this pie among more and more, human beings. I know Spotify did a thing where they created this cap where you only get paid out if you're above 10,000 streams. This is an effort to, aggregate some of that money back towards, quote unquote, the professionals. My question for you guys is, as more people continue to enter this industry, right, a huge part of trust is financial. People need to trust that when they put music out, they're going to be compensated fairly for it, whatever that means to them. If you guys were designing the system from the top down, how would you guys take the fixed amount of money that's coming into the industry and distribute it among the growing number of people that are entering in the way that maximizes trust?
Okay, this is really easy. We'll take the third one. We've got 45 seconds. We can cover it all. Was there a third?
I think there's 10 minutes between this and the next one, so we can...
Yeah, actually, there's a lunch break after this, but...
Perfect. We can stay here the entire lunch break and talk about AI, guys.
Do I see any other hands coming up? Over to you.
Okay. Do you want to go?
Yeah. Okay, so a simple answer to the second question is that if we take that the majority, I made this point earlier about, but I think it's something we can all agree on. The majority of activities that we do inside of music do not involve money, yet we do them. They may have the end goal that there will be success, but that success isn't necessarily the dream of being the biggest artist in the world. It's actually the success of being able to do that for a living or to continue to do that. So we do that currently through barter and through trust and exchange of services. So that already pre-existing activity needs to be recognized, and with new tools, not even monetized, just rewarded, like noted, okay, you did this is great. So I'll give you a quick example. In Dublin in the 80s when I was growing up, there was no money, right, nothing. What we used to do basically was, Tala, which was the largest housing estate, ran a coupon series. So it basically said, I'm a bricklayer, I go around to Hanna's, she's a plumber, yeah, grand. But then I could take that and I could exchange that with somebody else, something like that. But it isn't complicated because the activities already exist. So there's loads of technologies to figure it out. You can do the one about the human thing, because that's really complicated.
I think I do want to touch a little bit on the ideal system of distribution for a second there, because in a sense, it is currently an ideal system if you're a platform. If I'm a platform, it's better for me to have 1 million artists all earning less than 1,000 streams, none of which are monetized, because I keep the whole pot. Right. And especially when you look at social platforms, TikTok gets lauded a lot as like, oh, it's free marketing, oh, it's how you can go viral. But then creators on the app find it very, very difficult to reach the same audiences more than once. And this is because if I'm TikTok, I mean, I'm calling out TikTok, it's not specific to TikTok, but, it's because if I'm TikTok, it's better for me if my audience sees 1 million creators once each, because then I go, as an audience member, wow, TikTok's such a great app. And I don't follow any of those artists or those creators off platform. So we have to take into account the fact that trust is already broken because there is a business model, and because especially in the creative industries, especially in music, people would be doing this even if they weren't getting paid. They are doing it even though they aren't getting paid. I think in an ideal system, you would have it tiered in the same way that video is, basically. You have your cinema, you have your Netflix, you have your YouTube, you have your Nebula, and then you have your Instagram, and that those tiers each have different tracks for remuneration. If we could build music from the ground up, I think having a tiered system like that would be quite useful. Sad thing is that gatekeeping becomes necessary when everyone is so empowered for anyone to actually make money off of it. So yeah, that's honestly. I would make gates.
Gates of the casino.
We hate the word gatekeeping, but actually it serves a very useful purpose, and that is making different pools for different. The same way you don't have everyone competing in the same level in wrestling, because the big guys will just beat up the little kids. You need
You're saying
levels. Wrestling
is rigged?
I'm just saying.
This is well, listen, we will leave for lunch now on that kind of bombshell. So the casino logic makes a lot of sense. I'm going to be here for the next 2 days. If there's any part that you think that should go into, that could contribute to an AI literacy module, that you think would be useful for people to understand or to demystify, I'd be really grateful if you just come up and go here. And I'll give you my thanks. That's basically it. And thank you, Hanna.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. I will also be around, so happy to have a chat.
of the day.